Hello, everyone. I'm David Caius, one of the staff attorneys with the Family Defense Program at Americans for Immigrant Justice. I will be explaining the recent decision in Texas versus United States that came out on July 16, 2021. The Texas decision, unfortunately, was not surprising to immigration practitioners all throughout the country. It was something that we were expecting because the same judge was the one that had previously found DACA, Deferred Action for Parents of Americans, and the expansion to DACA were both illegal programs as well. So nevertheless, we do understand that it may be a surprise to some of you because of this constant roller coaster that has been DACA from its creation to the court orders stopping it and starting it all over again, that you expected a different outcome with the change in presidency, expected some more finality to it. Unfortunately, it was a decision that we were expecting, even if it was not the decision we would have liked. So based on this, what exactly did the judge decide in Texas versus United States? So the overall decision is that DACA was created illegally because the government failed to follow the Administrative Procedures Act when it granted new privileges under the Immigration and Nationality Act in 2012. This does not mean that the idea behind DACA is illegal or that it can never be implemented, only that the process in which it came about in 2012 with a simple memo from the Secretary of Homeland Security was not the appropriate way of doing things. So the judge himself said that because of the reliance that people have on DACA with employers, families, the actual dreamers that were granted DACA and wish to continue to keep DACA, it is not fair to end DACA for everybody. So anybody that was granted DACA status in the past can still continue with their status and is allowed to renew because of this reliance on the program. So what does this mean? It means that even though DACA applications cannot be granted new ones, the judge is letting previous applications proceed for renewals only. So keep this in mind. This does not mean that all pending applications are allowed. It means that only renewal applications are allowed to proceed. Even an initial pending application is forbidden from being granted, regardless of when it was submitted. The only ones allowed to proceed are renewals for individuals that had DACA in the past. However, there is no time limit to when a renewal application can be submitted. So that is good. If you have not submitted a renewal yet, you can still do it. It can be accepted. And as long as you meet the requirements under the 2012 guidelines, you can still be granted a new DACA extension, a new 2-year program length. However, initial applications, until there is a fix that complies with the Administrative Procedures Act or Congress passes legislation, cannot be approved. That is what the Texas decision came out saying on July 16th. So if your application is pending as a renewal, keep in mind that there is a large backlog with USCIS applications in general. So they are not going to be processed as previously was expected in 30 or 45 days. We are seeing that they are taking months to process. So it is just a matter of being patient. They are going to get through those applications and will be granting DACA. The latest information we have from USCIS is that DACA work permit extensions are now being granted for 2 years instead of 1 year, but it is a matter of patience. They will get through the backlog and will continue to submit them, but it is not going to be quick. It could take several months before you get your approval in the mail with your work permit renewal. So if your application is still pending or is yet to be submitted and you did not have DACA in the past, this means that your application cannot be approved. That unfortunately is the end of the matter. There are no exceptions to initial applications, to hardship or anything like that. It is all new applications, regardless of personal circumstances, are forbidden from being approved. This does not mean that USCIS is going to deny applications. From what we know, they are still accepting applications. They are holding them in abeyance until there is more more information, both from Homeland Security as to what the regulations are going to be, the new ones, more guidance, even from the courts. But they cannot be granted. They are basically being accepted and sent to storage while we await news, both USCIS and practitioners. So they have to continue accepting applications. If you choose to send them, just keep in mind that they will not grant them. They're not going to grant them anytime in the near future. So that is a personal decision on if you have not submitted your application yet, on if you want to wait until there's more concrete guidance or submit it. That is a decision you will have to make on your own once you consider the pros and the cons. But just keep in mind that it is not going to be granted anytime soon. We also do not expect mass denials of applications. And having to pay the application fee twice or multiple times now that DACA has been forbidden from being approved for new applications. But we don't know exactly what the procedure is going to be. We don't know if USCIS is going to start returning applications with the full fee and just saying, unfortunately, we can't process it, so here you go, here's your packet back, or if they will hold them indefinitely. So while we are waiting for more news, there is still that uncertainty. That uncertainty of how is USCIS going to proceed. So with that in mind, how is this going to affect your individual case with Americans for Immigrant Justice? If you have a DACA renewal or are working with us currently on a DACA renewal, we will process them. We will continue to help you gather evidence and submit them to USCIS because the Texas decision does not affect you currently. They are still going to be submitted. They're still going to be approved as long as all the requirements are met. So please keep working with us to get them submitted as quickly as possible so that there is no lapse in your employment authorization because of the backlog. So anything, please work with us to gather evidence so that we can do everything as quickly as possible. If you submitted an initial DACA application with us, with Americans for Immigrant Justice, and it is presently pending, we will keep your case pending with our office as well. We will keep monitoring the situation, and we will be able to give you updates as anything comes out, as more news come out of Homeland Security, as more news come out from Congress or the courts. But keep in mind that aside from keeping your case pending and keeping you informed of changes, there is nothing we as an organization can do to grant you an exemption to DACA. Like I said earlier, the Texas decision is very black and white. There are no exemptions to initial applications. So while we wait a permanent decision, your case would just remain pending with us, with USCIS, until we get more concrete guidance on what is going to happen to those initial applications while we await the regulations. The third possible group of people are initial individuals that did not have a chance to submit their application yet. If your application was not submitted to USCIS by Friday, by July 16th, at this time, Americans for Immigrant Justice will not submit the applications to USCIS, even though USCIS can still accept them. And USCIS is allowed to hold them in abeyance. We feel that it is a much better use of your money to take those $500 and place them for anything else. In this time of economic uncertainty, with the pandemic still going on and people unemployed, that it doesn't make sense to submit those $500 with a DACA application, knowing that it is going to be several months at least before anything happens, when you can use those $500 in a much more beneficial manner. So if you're in that situation, we can help you provide you guidance on what evidence you will need to gather, because it is always good to have the evidence ready to go for when a permanent fix comes out or a more concrete fix comes out. But we will not submit those applications. We will be closing cases that did not have the application submitted. If you choose to send the application on your own, that is entirely up to you. It is a personal decision. But we will be closing all of the non-submitted cases as of now while we await more decisions. When more news come out of how USCIS is going to process, what is going to happen with the regulations, with DACA, or a permanent fix through Congress, then we will put more information on our social media, send mass mailers as well, so that individuals that had pending cases with us can reach out to us and we can evaluate again how we can best serve you. But as of now, we are going to start closing those cases so that you can better use your money and find a more suitable means to spend those $500. So I know I've mentioned possible fixes a lot. What are the possible fixes to DACA? The slowest one is continued litigation. We know that the Biden administration is going to submit an appeal to the Texas decision, to the Fifth Circuit, and eventually that may lead to an appeal also to the US Supreme Court. However, this is a very slow process. It is not going to happen overnight. It is not going to happen immediately. The Texas decision came out of a very conservative circuit. The Fifth Circuit as well is also notoriously conservative. And the Supreme Court, after the last administration, now is also on a more conservative side. So the likelihood that any of these possible courts are going to grant DACA an emergency hearing just to overturn the judge's decision is very, very low. The last DACA case that ended up making its way to the Supreme Court took years to get there, from the time it was filed to in the district court to the time the appeal went through, and so on. So relying on the court system at this point to fix DACA is not going to be the best option, because it is slow in general, and the likelihood of winning overall is also very low. The next possible fix, as I mentioned earlier, are regulations. They have to comply with the Administrative Procedures Act. The government has to let the public comment, express their satisfaction with the program or dissatisfaction with the program as well, so that the best possible outcome can come out of the regulations. But even at the fastest timeline, from the time the regulations are initially proposed to when they are actually implemented, could take months as well. It could be 4 to 6 months. And the regulations have not been published as of now. So the likelihood that there will be a regulatory fix to DACA that complies with the Texas decision and the Administrative Procedures Act this year is very low as well. Assuming that even regulations came out tomorrow, it would still probably be winter time, 2020, the late 2021, 2022, before there is a final solution on the books. So it is not a quick process. It is considerably faster than litigation, but that is why we feel you're better off holding onto your $500 filing fee rather than waiting on regulations, because it could be 6 months, 8 months, maybe a year before there is a regulatory fix to DACA. The final option, the option that seems to be the possible fastest now, is a budgetary act through budget reconciliation through Congress to try to pass immigration reform. We know that there are currently ongoing negotiations happening in Washington, D.C. to try to see if immigration reform can pass through the budget, because in order to pass through a budget measure, it has to affect the budget at some point. So if it can be explained that it is a budget measure because of the amount of money it's going to bring into DHS or USCIS or so on, and tie it to a budgetary measure, it is possible to get a permanent solution. And what we are talking about here is a permanent solution. It's not just passing DACA and keeping it permanent through Congress, but rather trying to find a way to give dreamers a pathway to residency and eventual citizenship, rather than continuing with DACA. But we don't know what that is going to be like. we don't have specifics, all other than there are negotiations going on behind the scenes in Washington, D.C., especially now that Texas' decision came out, because it has made the fight for rights, for Dreamers' rights into the forefront once again during a very important time period, actually. So could a budget reconciliation pass quickly? Yes, it can, but it is not quickly in what we would expect it. It wouldn't be passing next week or the week after that. Congress has to pass the budget once a year before the fiscal year is out. We know that the fiscal year ends in September, so there should be a budget vote happening around then. But considering how slow negotiations are in Washington, D.C., the likelihood that we will have more concrete news about the budget reconciliation possibility is low before Labor Day. So I would expect more news to come out in about 6 weeks after Labor Day, once Congress is back from their August summer recess, and we have more news as to how the negotiations have gone on. But that seems to be a more pressing solution that has come out because of the news coverage and the likelihood that the more liberal parts of the Democratic Party have been pushing for immigration reform for a while. So now that Texas came out with the decision, it is becoming a much higher possibility that could fix. So how could that help you? Getting all of this contact information out there, all of this notice and comment when the regulations come out, explain how DACA has helped you. I'm trying to do advocacy as well for family members, parents, and everyone to call your members of Congress, your local senators, congressperson, and try to get them to sign on to immigration reform is definitely going to help this push to work through the budget process and try to get a more permanent fix in the next few months. Other than that, the next best solution is going to be the regulatory fix that the Biden administration is working on, but we don't know when that will come about. So trying to work and keep this conversation going, keep it in the news through advocacy. We're working with community partners. So if you're interested in having your story heard, please contact us, let us know, because there are a lot of people that want to hear the DACA stories, to put a face to the struggle for Dreamers' rights that may actually help in the future. I do also want to reassure everyone at this time that we do not expect ICE or any other immigration agency to start mass removal proceedings against individuals based on DACA applications. The administration has changed. It is a different enforcement priorities now. So as long as you do not have a criminal history, as long as you are not already on a law enforcement radar for unrelated activities, we do not expect them to take your information and start carrying out raids against people in the country that pose no danger to society. So with that being said, in order to avoid issues in the future, please keep clear of law enforcement interactions. Don't break the law, be on your best behavior, because any sort of interaction with law enforcement could lead to an immigration issue, regardless of what that is. So while we don't expect USCIS to be forwarding information to ICE for Dreamers and DACA individuals, that doesn't mean that if you are stopped for breaking traffic laws or commit a crime, that you are not going to be placed in removal proceedings. So please keep that in mind at this time while we're still figuring out what is going to be the next step in the protection for Dreamers. But make sure that like always, you're following all laws of the United States to make sure that you are not an enforcement priority. Enforcement priorities at this time are individuals that ICE considers a risk to the public safety. So any crimes, any possible arrests for criminal activity will definitely put you on ICE's radar and make you a priority for removal from the country. Other than that, we are not expecting raids, mass deportations, or anything based on the DACA applications. So we will keep monitoring the situation. We will keep posting more news as they come out to our social media, through mailers to everybody, and try to keep everyone updated in changes of law, changes in regulations, and how this will affect DACA in the future. But if you have any particular questions about your case, please contact our office. We're able to provide guidance. And like I said, if your case is not yet submitted, please contact our office so that we can have your contact information up to date, to provide you with up to date guidance, because we will be proceeding with closing those cases at this time. And in the future, we would still like to get as much information out there once there are changes in either DACA regulations or in the law as a whole that would help you maintain status in the US, or normalize your immigration history. Other than that, please keep following our social medias. All of our social media channels are going to have the latest information, and we'll keep everyone updated as the situation becomes more clear. Right now, it is very fluid, but as soon as we get more concrete news out of Homeland Security, we will post it, and we'll try to keep everyone up to date on the matter. So please, if you have any concerns about your personal situation and your case, go ahead, reach out to our office, and we will try to provide you as much guidance as quickly as possible.